Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got myself into this situation. Well, it all started a few weeks ago when I booked into an advanced screening of an awful movie called What Men Want. In all seriousness though, this movie is pretty awful. I've seen a few movies lately that I just couldn't be bothered reviewing, and one that I actually do want to talk about later on in another video at some point. It'll probably be later this year, who knows. But after seeing this movie, it took full priority. What Men Want is a garbage fire. By the way, I may wind up spoiling this movie, but it doesn't really matter because this movie literally does not have a plot. It doesn't have a story, a structure, characterization, development, anything. There are 10 rating credits on this movie and they could not even deliver on the bare minimum. Now, I haven't seen the original What Women Want, so for all I know it's just as bad as this, but from what I've heard, it at least actually had the bare minimum for a movie. The main character in that is a womanizing asshole who has to change his ways to be with the woman he wants to be with. In this movie, Taraji P. Henson plays an asshole who is just an asshole the entire movie. She does asshole things to asshole people, but they're assholes too, so you can root for this asshole. There is not a single likable character in this entire movie. Our protagonist is a bitch to everyone around her and uses people to get what she wants. But so that the film can make people like her, every other character is an asshole as well. It just makes the viewing experience so much worse. It doesn't help that every performance in this movie is utterly abysmal. This is the first time that I could say Taraji P. Henson did not do a good job. She didn't fit her role and was just completely unconvincing as her character. And I use the term character very lightly here, because our protagonist is a blank slate. She doesn't really have any interesting traits, she's a walking cliche. They try and make her likable and it just never works. There's a scene where she calls out a coworker for a racist and sexist comment, as if she didn't make a homophobic comment in the opening of the movie. I have no issue with gay jokes, but I do have an issue with bad writing. Tracy Morgan was legitimately embarrassing in his role. Every line of dialogue that came out of his mouth was just so forced. It doesn't help that every line of dialogue is terribly written. The jokes constantly fall flat. This movie has every annoying comedy cliche in the book. It explains its jokes. There's literally a scene where Pete Davidson dabs, and in case you didn't get that you were meant to laugh because he dabbed, Taraji P. Henson literally says the word dab. It was legitimately cringe-inducing. There's a scene with a joke that almost works, but the rest of the writing of the scene kinda ruins it. During Taraji's meeting with the psychic, she slams down a lot of tarot cards while moaning because apparently that's really funny. I can do that, where's my $20 million budget movie? One of the cards she slaps down is a skip card from the game Uno, which was almost funny, but the entire joke that it got shoved in with was unfunny and ruined the impact of the joke completely. On top of that, the rest of the scene shows that the psychic is legitimate, which makes the joke so confusing. If she's an actual psychic, why is this happening? And yes, the argument could be made that I'm reading too deep into this movie, but this is What Men Want. I doubt anyone's gonna care if I question the logic of this movie in particular. The psychic scene was just bizarrely written in general. This is taking place at a bachelorette party, but for some reason this happens one-on-one and nobody else gets a shot with the psychic. This wasn't even Taraji's bachelorette party. What the hell is going on? Speaking of bizarrely written, how do these mind powers work exactly? I'm not asking for anything scientific, but some consistency would be nice. The entire movie she can hear men's faults while clearly not wanting to. However, there's a scene where her love interest is leaving her and there are tons of men around at the time, none of whom whose faults are popping into her head, but in the very next scene she can hear their faults again. I'm not asking for your film to make 100% scientific sense, but I am asking you to at least follow the rules you set up. Even ignoring the film's awful writing and unlikable characters and bad lead performance, the film is still a complete and utter failure. The editing was very annoying. This isn't a cut every second fest like most badly edited movies, or an attempt at showing off editing skills that just wind up being obnoxious like Saw 4 or Vice, but this movie features a lot of jarring and unnecessary cuts. There are scenes where the natural flow is interrupted by random cuts.
Girl, I feel like I just ran half a marathon. I need some electrolytes. You want some electrolytes?
No.
I don't smoke or nothing after sex, but I'm gonna give me some Gatorade. You want some Gatorade?
No.
I got flavors.
In the scene where we first meet the psychic, there's a close-up shot on her that cuts into another close-up shot of her that proceeds to continue zooming in. It just felt out of place. The cinematography was terrible. There are so many shots in this movie that go for symmetrical angles but are just so ever slightly off. The worst offender of this being the scene where Taraji gets her big promotion and she's meant to be in the middle of the shot, but she's just a bit too far to the right for the shot to actually look good. I felt like I was watching A Wrinkle in Time. Speaking of A Wrinkle in Time, this movie also has an awful child performance and it may actually top Charles Wallace. Maybe. I'll need to watch A Wrinkle in Time again to decide that. At the very least, he's just as bad. For a movie about hearing inner thoughts, you'd think more effort would have been put into the audio mixing of the movie. There are dialogue scenes that are very clearly dubbed and it's very distracting. There's one scene where Aldous Hodge says something to Taraji and the framing is behind him, but it's a close-up and it's just close enough so that the side of his lip can be clearly viewed, and it does not match up to what he's saying at all. One of the worst things about this movie is its music choices. The musical score is overbearing and annoying, but the song choices are flat out terrible. Easily the worst part of this was the bastardization of the Aretha Franklin classic Think.
I was gonna change, but I'm not. If we keep doing things I don't, you better think, yeah. Let's go back, let's go. Oh, you better think.
I had nothing against her or HER or however you say it, I don't know. But this is literally just butchering a classic. Maybe tone it down on the auto-tune, just a little. One thing that surprised me in how bad it was the costume design. Every character in this movie's clothing screams obnoxious. There are scenes where it's obvious they were trying to prove a point with the costumes, but it just wound up making the scene look unpleasant. Get it? All the guys in the room are wearing dark colors, but she's the only one wearing white because she's the only woman there. Even if this costume choice was good, there was another woman in the room, so the weird forced attempt at a message there didn't work. Even ignoring the premise lacking any continuity and the characters being dumb, this film still has some stupid garbage. So Taraji ends up in hospital because a dick balloon knocks her into a stage, which gives her her concussion, which gives her her powers. In the next scene, it's established that she can't drive for the following week, so her assistant will be helping by doing that. But she finds out about a poker game and instantly drives herself there. Did the film skip ahead a week in time? The pacing was already abysmal, but this is too far. There's also the conflict where Taraji P. Henson and Jason Jones just can't get along. So to screw her over, he leaves his job and signs her client with a Chinese corporation. But after Taraji screws him over, he gets his original job back despite everyone there hating him and considering him a traitor. What the hell was that? There's also the entire conflict with Taraji pretending people are her family to appeal to a client. She gets exposed to her hubby and he gets really angry and refuses to hear her out. And I'm not even kidding, he says something along the lines of, "So you invited me to that basketball game to use me, not to apologize for accusing me of cheating on my dead wife?" It was hilarious, but unfortunately for the film, that was clearly not the intention. This film did have a surprising amount of unintentional humor for a comedy. I'd even say I was never bored. There's also some really infuriating color grading at times. This is a $20 million movie and it features scenes that look like they had iMovie filters slapped on them. I keep bringing up the $20 million budget of this movie, and it's because I can't figure out where it went. The actors are well known, but not well known enough to justify that big a paycheck. The marketing was not that big. This film just wasted $20 million. Overall, this film really is an embarrassment in every sense of the word. It's not unbearable as it's a fascinating watch in the sense of how awful it is. I'd definitely watch it over Taraji's last Miss Proud Mary, despite this being much worse. This isn't the worst film of 2018 because Welcome to Marwen still exists, but this is pretty bad overall. If you want something stupid and bad to rip apart, I'd highly recommend you check this one out. As for the rest of you, avoid this at all costs. I'm giving What Men Want a 0 out of 10. It sucked. I'm done now. Bye.